Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into something absolutely fascinating from Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. We're going to tackle a huge question. How much control do we really have over our own lives?
So let's think about this. Are you in control of your habits, or are they kind of in control of you? To really get into this, we're going to look at two incredible and incredibly different real-life stories. We've got two people whose lives were completely upended by their habits. But, and this is the crazy part, society judged them in totally different ways. Okay, first up, let's talk about Angie Bachmann. Picture this. She's a homemaker, her kids are all grown up, her husband's at work all day, and she's just bored. She felt like her life was missing that spark, you know? So, to fill those empty days, she started popping into a casino every once in a while. And at first, it was just that, a fun little escape, a reward for getting through the week. But then, you see how it progresses here. 6 months later, she's playing for hours, actually winning enough to help with bills. But fast forward a few years, and it's a totally different story. She's going every single day, not for fun, but to escape this crushing anxiety. She's borrowing money, and in the end, she lost everything. $1 million inheritance, even her home, just gone.
But here's the wild part. Through all of this, Angie was absolutely convinced she had it under control. She told herself, I have rules, I'm disciplined. Even as those rules started to bend and break and the debt piled up, she held on to this idea that she was a smart, strategic player, not an addict.
Now, it's super important to know this wasn't all happening in a vacuum. The casino, Harrah's, was playing a very, very smart game. They used loyalty cards to track everything she did. They calculated what they called her predicted lifetime value. And then they pounced. They sent her coupons, cash vouchers, made personal calls. They'd offer free limos, flights, concert tickets, whatever it took to trigger that gambling habit and get her back through their doors. An executive literally called it Pavlovian marketing. They were ringing a bell, and she was responding, just as they planned.
All right, let's switch gears completely. I want you to hold Angie's story in your mind, and now let's turn to a story that is just unbelievably tragic. This is the story of Brian Thomas.
So one night, Brian and his wife are on vacation, sleeping in their camper van. He wakes up and makes this absolutely horrifying 911 call. He thinks he's just fought off an intruder who is attacking his wife. But when he fully wakes up, he realizes the person he strangled was his wife. Brian had been a sleepwalker his whole life, but he had zero memory of what just happened. Just complete confusion and horror.
So experts looked into his case and they realized this wasn't just simple sleepwalking. What Brian experienced is called a sleep terror. And during a sleep terror, it's like the lights are on but nobody's home in the conscious part of your brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part that handles logic, decision-making, choice, it's completely shut down. All that's running are the most primitive, deep-seated parts of the brain, pure instinct.
So, okay, let's step back. We've got two people, right? Angie, whose compulsive habit ruined her financially, and Brian, whose unconscious habit led him to kill his own wife. You'd think, well, you know what you'd think. But the legal system saw them in two completely, and I mean completely, different ways.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look at this comparison. Brian Thomas, he acted unconsciously. He killed his wife, and he was found not responsible. They let him go. Angie Bachmann, she acted compulsively. She lost her inheritance, and she was found responsible for all her debts. So what gives? How can a man who killed someone walk free, while a woman who lost money is held accountable? The answer, it turns out, isn't in a law book. It's in our neurology. We have to ask, what is actually happening differently in the brain during an unconscious act versus a compulsive one? That's the key.
So to really get why the verdicts were so different, we've got to pop the hood and look at what was going on inside their heads, neurological speaking.
Okay, so let's look at Brian's brain during that sleep terror. First, the switch that's supposed to cleanly move your brain from awake to asleep just fails. This causes the higher level parts of his brain, like that prefrontal cortex we talked about, to basically just shut down. All that's left running are these super primitive automatic programs. So when his sleeping brain perceived a threat, a primal fight-or-flight habit just took over. There was literally no one home in the conscious part of his mind to say, hey, wait a second, no choice was possible.
But what about Angie's brain? Well, that was a whole different story. A neuroscientist named Reza Habib did this really cool study where he looked inside the brains of pathological gamblers to figure out what was making them tit. What he found was kind of mind-blowing.
He put gamblers in an MRI and had them watch a slot machine. And for the problem gamblers, he noticed something weird. Their brain's reward centers lit up like a Christmas tree, not just when they won, but also when they had a near miss. You know, when the cherries almost lined up? To their brain, that near miss felt almost exactly the same as an actual win.
And you can see it right here in this chart. For most people, a social gambler, a near miss registers as a loss. It's disappointing. It's a signal from your brain saying, hey, maybe we should stop doing this. But look at the pathological gamblers. For them, that same event, a near miss, triggers a massive reward signal. It doesn't tell them to stop. It tells them, oh, you were so close. Do it again. Their brains were literally misreading the signals.
So this is the whole point. This huge difference in what's happening in the brain is what leads to this massive distinction in how we think about responsibility and free will.
Let's break it down. Brian Thomas had no idea this violent habit even existed inside him. Sure, he sleepwalked, but he'd never, ever been violent. He was totally unaware of this potential. But Angie, she was aware of her gambling habit for years. She knew it was a problem. She even tried to get help. She had opportunities to change. That awareness is everything.
And this, right here, is the central takeaway from Duhigg's book, and it's why the law sees these two cases so differently. The second you become aware that a habit exists, once you see it, you are no longer a passenger. You now have the freedom and, yeah, the responsibility to start working on it, to try and remake it. You know, the famous philosopher William James, he really struggled with this. He felt completely trapped by his own habits and moods. So he decided to try an experiment. He said, for 1 year, my first act of free will is going to be to believe in free will. He literally made a habit to believe he had the power to change. And guess what? That belief, practiced over and over, is what actually gave him the power to change. It's a bit of a mind bender, right? And all of this kind of brings me to this great little story that the writer David Foster Wallace used to tell. It goes something like this. So what's the water? The water is our habits. It's all the stuff we do without thinking. The automatic choices and routines that make up our daily lives. We're swimming in it all the time and we don't even notice it. And that's the real power here. It's not about just gritting your teeth and using willpower. It's about learning to see the water. Because the moment you become aware of it, the moment you can actually see the habits that are guiding you, that's when you get the freedom and the responsibility to decide if you want to change course and start swimming in a different direction.